The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. With your host, Dave Hondel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stage Door Show. This is Dave Hondel. I am so honored to have tonight's guest. I'm a huge fan of his work. And besides that, he's one of the busiest actors in Hollywood. He has a lot of stuff coming up, so we'll talk to him about that as well. But please welcome to the show, Ronnie Gene Blevins. Thank you, Ronnie, for coming on the show.
Dave, thank you so much, buddy. Thanks for talking with me, man.
Absolutely. You know, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I have to tell you this story for our listeners. About a month ago, I was on the couch watching TV with my wife, and she's a channel surfer, so she has the remote in her hand pretty much all the time. And we were scrolling through all the HBO shows that were on, and we got to one scene on one of the movies that we were watching, and she put the remote down as I was looking at her, like, please don't change the channel. And it was a scene from the movie Joe with you and Ty Sheridan, and it was a scene on the bridge that it got me. I mean, I was like, it was such an amazing performance, and I just watched the entire rest of the movie, and then we, because of that, and it was on again on HBO, we watched the whole movie. But that's what really drew me into your performance, Ronnie. Just an amazing scene, movie with Nicolas Cage, and that whole film was just, I think all the performances were just amazing. And talk about not only that scene with Ty, because I mean, Ty being a young actor like that, it was just to me, it was amazing. But just the way you interacted with him, talk about your process to get into that kind of role, because you're playing a bad guy. But how do you get into that type of role? Because like I said, it was so believable, such an amazing scene. So talk about your process. How do you get into that kind of mindset?
So thank you so much for saying that. Joe, we shot that in 2012. It was directed by David Gordon Green. And that was definitely one of probably the darkest roles I've ever played. And a very dark movie too. But everyone was exceptional. And it was, we go from experience to experience in this industry, and some are great and some are not so great, and it runs the spectrum. But with the freedom that I felt with David Gordon Green on that movie, and the relationship that I had with Ty and Nick Cage, I feel that I still feel that that's kind of the experience that I'm always chasing. That's how remarkable that experience was. But process, well, I play a lot of villains, and I think in very general terms, they say that the villain is simply the hero of his own story, right? Yeah. So I think any actor playing a villain that really longs to make it something rich and mean something, he can't frame himself in his own experience as the villain. So, he has to have some sort of justifications. So you start with a long list of justifications as to why you are what you are, and I journal a lot, and you kind of develop this whole narrative in this biography that doesn't necessarily exist in the script at all, and you start to buy into this man's life, all you need is a couple of real good reasons and justifications, and that gives you sort of an entranceway into the character. That David lets you do anything. Like, David was the kind of guy that would be like, okay, let's do this next scene, but don't say any words, like he would just, there was nothing that we could try that would be beyond the pale or that would be wrong. There was no bad impulses. It was all just kind of, if it exists within the confines of your imagination, then let it rip, and there's no wrong, no wrong choices.
Do you ever find that working with certain directors, like you said, he gave you leeway to, I guess, kind of go off on your own, whatever you felt, I guess, would make it your own, but Is that the case with all directors, or is that just you have to kind of understand the director you're working for and have a relationship like that where you know that you could, if you feel that it's going to be right for that scene, is that something you have the leeway to do for most directors?
No, yeah, I think it's absolutely movie dependent and director dependent.
Yeah.
Some are very literal. They frame actors as more as set pieces in the world they've created, and the script exists for a reason. Say the words, stand where I want you to stand. Say the words that have been written for you, and that's certainly another way to work. But I think that if you're going to be a director that decides to execute like that, then you better have a really unique vision, because you completely own it at that point. I mean, a director owns the whole, whether or not a movie is good or bad, it all lies on the director's shoulders regardless. But,
right.
I'm obviously, when you show up to shoot a film, it's really the director's party, and you're just kind of there. And so I'm down for whatever the director wants to do. I would say I'm a little more partial to directors that are up for the collaboration. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's always nice to do even if you're just doing one your way and the rest the way the director, had it in his mind.
How much research do you do on the characters that you play? I mean, even if it's not like maybe a historically true character, I mean, if it's somebody that's a villain or a good guy, whatever. I mean, how do you research your characters?
Well, a lot of it is imagination based. So, because most of what I played aren't historical figures or people that existed in reality. A couple have been. So again, I journal a lot. I create this backstory. I create this whole life, this whole story for this guy. I also do a lot of exploration into the region to where it's the story's from.
Right.
Like for instance, Joe. I mean, that was a little easier because it was Texas. It was South. I think it was kind of. It never really set, but I think it was supposed to be Texas, somewhere in that area.
Sure.
I'm leaving next week to shoot a show for Apple in Baltimore, so I'm watching documentaries on that time period in Baltimore. Getting a flavor for the accent. Getting a flavor for the people.
Yeah.
If it's a period piece, documentaries about what was happening in that time. What were the big, political things going on. What were the big issues? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's not. It doesn't seem like direct work on the specific character. It all counts. You know what I mean? It all adds layers.
Right.
It's work you're putting into it. And on a very technical level, I just do a lot of repetition.
Sure.
Or just lines over and over and over again. A lot of people, I think there's two different ways to work. You either start from the interior and go to the exterior, or you start with the exterior or kind of the superficial things and go inward. I know people that they feel like they have to earn a right to say the line, so they're not going to even start to say a line until they've journaled, who is this guy, until they've done hours and hours of work about who this character is. I find that I'm a little bit of the opposite. I kind of have to start with the technical and go into the repetition and say lines over and over and over again. And,
sure.
And kind of when I get that over the way, then more of who the guy is starts to reveal himself to me.
Yeah. Great process. Was this something that you always dreamt of being as a kid, an actor, or did this kind of evolve over the years?
Now that I have the benefit of hindsight, I can look back and say that 100% it was the camcorder that my parents bought me when I was in sixth grade.
Yeah.
It was making home movies, which it was really kind of the first time that interest. I had like this fire to do something, right? And I do remember when I was at the library, I had this. I had made like these home movies, like Attack of the Killer Guinea Pigs.
Yeah, okay.
And we had cable, and I remember it was, I believe it was Do the Right Thing, right? I was watching that, right? And I was a big, even as a kid, I just not knowing anything about filmmaking, I was a big Spike Lee fan, right? And then I remember going to the library, and I saw on the bookshelf, I saw this, it said Do the Right Thing. And then I opened it up, and it was a script, right? It was
Oh, really?
Words in a book. It was also a script.
Yeah.
So it was the first time I'd ever seen a script, right? And I said, oh my God. And then I went and I rented that, and I waited for Do the Right Thing to come on, and I would hear them saying the words, and it would coincide with the script, and it just blew my mind. That peek behind the curtain totally blew my mind wide open.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that, just looking back, I can see that level of intrigue and excitement for something at an early age. I mean, it's definitely interesting, but it wasn't. I lived in Texas. I grew up in the the 80s, and it wasn't something that was necessarily nurtured. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it kind of came back around after I went to college, and I took a job with a mutual fund company, and I realized, oh wow, this is profoundly not for me,
right?
And I just made my way back to that, and moved to LA at about 21, 22, and not knowing anything, and I just spent the better part of my 20s studying.
Yeah. When was your big break? I mean, what was that one project that you knew this is what you're going to do as a career? What was that big break for you?
Well, big break. I mean, I do think that a career is kind of just a series of big breaks.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because you always think that we're dreamers, right? So whatever you're currently working on, you dream, oh, there's something, even if the like, objectively speaking, the reality of what's around you is not necessarily that, you pick certain things about it, like, oh, this is special.
Right.
This is so special.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe getting a guest star in ER was my first guest star, and that was kind of some affirmation that
sure.
See, again, remember I told you I moved to LA at 21, 22,
right.
and I studied all throughout my 20s. I didn't work,
right.
Right. And I was like, oh man, I don't know why I'm not working,
Sure.
So probably when I turned like 29, 30, after about 8 years, I got my first guest star on ER. So that was cool. And that started like a series of guest star work in television show.
Right.
And then my first kind of big studio thing was Dark Knight Rises, getting a couple of scenes in that.
That was great.
But I still think, as far as like, I feel like we get anointed, or we graduate to this next level.
Right, right.
You're a guest star actor. Maybe you get a reoccurring, and then maybe you get a series lead. So you get a couple scenes in movies, and then I feel like Joe was sort of was a graduation for me. I got a lot of landscape in a movie with Nick Cage, one of my favorite actors, David Gordon Green,
right,
one of my favorite directors, and I held my own. So that was, and we get, we earn these experiences. We're able to play inside that world, and we do okay. We hold our own. Yeah. And I think that like we kind of feed off that confidence to sustain that, and maybe even have that as like the threshold below which we won't fall under for the kind of work we want to do moving forward.
Yeah. And speaking of all the work that you've done, and Ronnie, have you ever do you ever sit down and watch your performances? Like, I mean, more for like a just to see how your performance was and see if there's anything you learned from.
It's like
I
an
guess.
athlete with game tapes.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Watching game tapes.
Right.
Yep. I could tell you that like I think I still have this, although I try to work on it. I hold tension in my mouth. Right.
Okay.
So and I can't even do it now. But
sure.
You pull up a performance, you're going to see it.
Okay.
Right? And I work on it. So I work on relaxing.
Right. Right.
Like relaxing my face.
Right.
I'd never know that if I didn't watch my performances.
Right. Right.
So I think it's I think that there's a distinction to be made. No, I don't like it, but I do think it's necessary.
Right.
At least check it out once. Check in.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I'm holding tension in my mouth. Oh wow, I blink a lot.
Sure. Yeah, I heard an interview before Ray Liotta passed away, and he said that he never saw Field of Dreams. So I remember thinking to myself, I wonder, that was a question because I never thought of that question before, because I just assumed people watched their performances to see, like you said, like a game tape. But when he said that, it kind of threw me off, going, I wonder if any other actors don't watch their performances after they do them. I'm sure. Can I cuss on this? Oh, of course.
I'm sure not all of them are full of shit.
Right.
I would say a good 50% of them are full of shit.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of them are like they have an adverse reaction.
Yeah.
Again, I don't like it. But it's more of an objection. I think it becomes more of an objective observation.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
It's a part of the discipline, really. It's a visual medium. You know what I mean?
You got to see how you did. Yeah. I don't like watching myself on video, but I know, like you said, it's a necessary evil sometimes to do it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about this because I'm a huge fan of the Conjuring franchise. Yeah. And I'm just a huge fan. But when I saw the scene, the big scene where you get killed in the movie, I mean, it was just insane to me. Just like how being in like a horror element film like that. I mean, again, there's different process, I guess, how you have to get ready for stuff like that. But is there a different feel for a movie like that that's kind of got horror elements in it to get ready? I mean, more prepared for something like that.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm kind of keyed into that whole world. I believe in spirits. I believe in ghosts.
Me too. Yeah.
So I definitely think I kind of approached it with more reverence.
Right. Right.
I've told this story before, but I think it's a wild story.
Yeah.
It might make me sound like a a little off my rocker.
Not to me, it won't.
I thought of I thought about 3 euphemisms, all of which cycled through, and I thought, I don't think I can say that anymore. I don't think I can say that. I think. So the day before I went to shoot The Conjuring,
mm-hmm.
Because I'm like you, man. Conjuring 1 and 2 scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, right.
And I always kind of felt like a little bit of a sensitivity to what I perceive to be spirits or something that I can't explain.
Right.
And so I had a little bit of apprehension. I was going out of town, and at the time, our son was living. Our son was sleeping in our bed. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Probably 2 or 3, and but he was old enough to talk.
Right.
Mind you, our son has never he's never had issues with ghosts or no fear. You know how your children, there's an age before which they're not scared of anything.
Oh, sure.
And then after that age, they're scared of everything.
Right. Exactly.
Usually it's something. It's probably something they usually watch on TV, right?
Yeah.
But so sorry to sum this up real quick. I'm about to leave. The night before, I go in my room and I say a little prayer and I say, hey. My son's name is Leo.
Yeah.
My wife's name is Veronica. I say, I'm going to go shoot this thing, The Conjuring. It's a story about some dark stuff.
Right.
And I was wondering if maybe we can get Leo's spirit guides to come and look after them while I'm gone. Right. So I left. Mm-hmm. Next night, my wife calls me. True story. Yeah. My wife calls me. I'm in where did we shoot The Conjuring? Jesus. Wherever we were. Connecticut. And No, we shot it in Atlanta. It took place in Connecticut.
Okay,
sorry.
right, yeah.
So she calls me and she goes, "Oh my God, it's like 1 a.m. there. It's like 11 p.m. here."
Sure.
She calls me and she goes, "Oh my God." I go, "What happened?" She goes, "Leo, he just sat up in bed and he looked and said, 'Mommy, who are those people right there?'"
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she goes, "Who? Leo?"
Yeah.
She goes, that old man and those two children." And
wow.
she grabs Leo.
Yeah.
So like they camp out in the living room. She calls me and she's like,
Yeah.
And I had never told Veronica or anyone that I had said a prayer praying for spirit guides. And of course, it could just be happenstance that the night after I prayed for spirit guides to look after him, that he decides to, do what often children do, which was see shit that's not there.
Yeah.
But me, because I believe in all that, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because I prayed for the spirit guides. Anyway, this is all tangential. So yes, I approached Conjuring 3 with a little reverence, and specifically because it was based on a real guy who had gotten murdered. So there was definitely definitely a dance. I think we wanted to walk there because he was murdered, and the real guy that murdered him only got 5 years,
Right.
And so it was a delicate dance because that's one of those where he's a real guy,
right?
So
yeah, exactly.
It's like
wow.
It's a delicate dance because the guy was gruff, he was drunk,
sure,
you know what I mean,
right?
But you want to kind of ride that line.
Right.
So yeah, I think, but you, in a movie like that, we had Michael Chaves, and you have a lot of people involved, great producers,
right.
Peter Safran, people, and of course James. We got people that are involved with 1, 2, the whole legacy, the whole series,
right.
And they're kind of keeping a watchful eye on everything,
right?
Making sure it falls in line with everything historical, everything with the first 2 pictures.
Yeah. Well, just for the record, I've lived in 2 haunted houses in my life.
Oh my God.
In
Really?
South Jersey, that were in around the Revolutionary War area.
What was the wildest thing that ever happened?
Well, actually, and I tell people this too, and people don't believe me, but I was doing a podcast in my studio downstairs. We lived near Philadelphia, but we were in South Jersey, right near across the street. We had a 1700s cemetery. And literally right across the street. So I don't know where the cemetery back in the day went to. I'm assuming it maybe was where our house was, but it was in the early 1850s that this house was built, and we still actually own the house in Jersey. But I was sitting in the basement at my studio, like I am right now, doing a podcast or about to, and I had, I don't know, whatever the object was. It was like I don't know, like this phone thing here, and literally. In front of me, it just did a 180 right in front of me. It just moved right in front of me, just like that. And it was looking like it faced me. And then that was one thing. And then we also had my stepdaughter was in school at the time, and she had a stack of books that were literally on the one of the tables that we had, but it wasn't falling off or anything like that. In front of me, it slid off and just dropped on the floor. So right in front of me. So I know somebody was telling me, "Hey, I'm here." It wasn't anything sinister, nothing bad, So and then my daughter had people whispering in her ear.
How long did you guys live there?
Well, my wife had it for 20 years. The house, still own it, like I said.
You guys rented out?
Yeah, we rented out. Yes.
What a wild.
Yeah.
I guess we're all gonna find out.
Yeah.
At some point.
So Ronnie, what's the most challenging work that you've had so far? I mean, and all the stuff that you've done, what has been the most challenging piece of work that you've done?
Well, there's a movie that I did that I'm not sure when it's going to come out. It was a movie called Emancipation with Will Smith.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that presented challenges because it was it was a Civil War drama.
Right.
It was in the middle of we shot it in New Orleans,
okay,
Louisiana, and we started shooting that in July.
Okay.
And where the uniforms we're wearing are like 3 layers of like wool.
Wow. Yeah.
And you got like Louisiana in the summer in the swamps.
Yeah.
So just So that was really hard, just because there's no real. I mean, I guess you can condition for that,
Right.
So that definitely presented challenges, and I think because it's a movie about I mean the darkest time in
Right.
American history,
Right.
and I think we all felt sort of like this profound sense of this profound responsibility of telling that story.
Right.
That this I remember this was going around, but I remember our stunt coordinator said, "Listen, man, it might be hard, but these guys did it for real." You know
Right.
what I mean?
True.
And
Yeah.
But I think that was probably the most physically demanding, and riding a horse every day. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a total blast, and
Right. Yeah.
and we're making movies, and we're doing what we dreamed of, and we're acting out childhood fantasies, just being able to make a movie.
Right. Right.
But because of first and foremost, because of the nature of the film,
Yeah.
and because because of the part I played,
Yeah.
and being on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of
Sure.
morality, and being in the heat, it was just a recipe for
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I know there's a lot of filming that's done down there still in Atlanta and so forth. Is there a favorite geographic place you've ever filmed that you really liked?
And New Orleans is up there.
Really? Yeah.
New Orleans is cool. My family came out there with me because it was summertime, and
Right.
Leo didn't have school, and New Orleans. I mean, we're always like, everywhere we go, we're like, well, maybe we could live here.
Yeah.
We always like
Sure.
looking at Zillow and like looking at houses.
Yeah. Right.
And New Orleans was our last.
Yeah.
New Orleans was actually up there. Yeah. I mean, I shot up in Montreal. Shot Death Wish in
Sure.
Montreal. That
Yeah.
was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I shot many years ago. I shot Hawaii 5-0 in Hawaii. That was pretty.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You kind of like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ronnie, I guess some advice. We have independent artists, as I spoke about before our show started, and we try to give them a little advice with each of our guests to try to avoid pitfalls, the type of thing that they might encounter. So, what kind of advice can you give our new up and coming actors that are just getting started in this field?
Sure. Well, I'd say first and foremost, I'd say make sure that you're in love
Right.
with. I mean, whatever the profession. If it's acting, great. I mean, so we're talking to young actors.
Sure,
Yes, I
sure.
would say make sure you're in love, because it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? It's like it will be. It's a blessing and a curse, right?
Sure.
It's a curse because you're likely going to endure a lot of struggle,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
And if you love it, and as was my experience, it was a profound love for me.
Right.
Then it's like I remember Rounders, Matt Damon,
Yeah.
talking to the professor, and he says, what choice? Talks about not having a choice.
Right.
So if the love is profound and deep, then it's going to guide you through.
Right.
It's going to guide you through years of rejection and highs and lows.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing because it'll guide you through.
Right.
And in particular, if you get a chance to do it on a level where you're really connecting with a role, and it doesn't even have to be in a movie or a show, or it could be in an acting class.
Right.
It's a sort of kind of spiritual place you arrive where you're connecting, and everything else falls away.
Right.
And if you've experienced that love, then it's going to guide you through, and that's the good news, and it's also the bad news, because if you're when you've been struggling for years and there's no no good news in sight, it also makes it a lot harder for you to come to terms with leaving,
Right. Yeah.
or doing something else. And that was always kind of where I landed,
Yeah.
when I would hit, struggles, which is like I don't really have a choice because
Right.
because I've experienced the buzz of being in it, and
Right.
and it, when it's good, it's been great.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, man, well,
Yep.
the juice is worth the squeeze.
Right.
But the juice isn't worth the squeeze, but I tell people, by all means, listen, if there's something else that can make you happy, go do
Right.
that, because that's not that's good news. Then you can find something else that fulfills you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Got to be dedicated to whatever you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I think a philosophical approach of like,
Right.
Like something you either find or you don't.
Yeah.
And then and if you do find that love and you decide that you're not going anywhere, I would say just do the work, man.
Yeah.
Just do the work. Whatever it is, just work harder than anyone else. I think that I think there's natural talent, and there's people that are just doing the work, repetition,
Right.
and those kind of those guys who get down and get to work are the ones that they hit pay dirt.
Yeah. Right. Great advice. Thank you. The last thing before we end the podcast, Ronnie, is I ask this of everybody. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to think of Ronnie Gene Blevins when it's all said and done?
Well, I guess the first thing that comes to me is that that I love my family.
Yeah.
It's because that's it.
Right.
My son and my wife. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the core of.
Right.
That's the reason.
Who you are. That's why you do what you do, right? And I'm with you, man. I hear you. Well, Ronnie, I can't, again, like I said before, I can't thank you enough for spending the time to be on my show tonight. And huge fan of your work, like I said. And again, I really do appreciate the time that you took. So thank you again for being on my show.
Thank you, brother. It was a lot of fun. You're a real soulful guy, man. It's really fun talking to you.